Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Again, commending your attention to Tarpley.net. Tarpley.net, and get yourself a copy of 9/11 Synthetic Made in USA. There's also the Twitter feed, Webster G. Tarpley on the Twitter feed. Lots and lots of tweets over the weekend. If you wanted to keep up with these crisis situations, minute to minute, hour to hour, look at that Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed. You can reach it just by going to Tarpley.net. Look in the upper right-hand corner. It says Twitter. You click on that, and you get to see all the Twitters. You don't have to sign up for Twitter. You can just take a look at it through Tarpley.net, and I hope that people will do that, especially when the going gets rough, when the world is lashed by new acute crises. Right? You can keep up between programs and between interviews and so forth. With that, lots and lots of new stuff on Tarpley.net this week, all kinds of appearances. Russia Today, twice, I believe, Rents. Very important interview with a Serbian magazine, Pechat. There's now a Serbian page on the Tarpley.net, and so forth. But now let's look at the economic situation. Ironically, as I said before, the Tea Party coming to Washington, again, a demographic base made up of brokers, real estate brokers, stock brokers, insurance brokers, and retired military, with reactionary ideas, right? Their desire to demolish the New Deal and Great Society programs. They have contributed to the unleashing of this current panic, because it is the fear that they introduced by their demand of going to the brink, using the debt ceiling for extortion and blackmail. This has created these stresses that you could see building up in the early part of this week as cash fled from Italy, Spain, their stocks, their bonds, into Germany, Switzerland, Japan, not being able to go to treasuries. They went to U.S. banks. And this then allowed the weakness of Italy and Spain, plus the summer holidays, plus the failure to outlaw credit default swaps. That has set up the present situation, along with the fact that these feeble anti-depression measures of the Obama regime, the stimulus and so forth, are coming to an end. So the Tea Party has brought no positive idea on that front. If they want to do something on Libya, they might be able to save themselves there. They can redeem themselves up to a certain point. But now, look, we have a world depression. We're in the second wave of a world depression, as I've told you repeatedly. The second wave of the last depression was the European banking crisis of 1931, and since last year, 2010, 2011, we're having a European banking crisis. And if you don't believe me, look at Commerzbank, Societe Generale, and Unicredito. That is a European banking crisis. But now, what's the policy answer? Ezra Klein, a young columnist for the Washington Post, where will the recovery come from? The Fed has been at 0%. The Fed has tried quantitative easing. The U.S. government has tried a stimulus. What is there left that they can do? If you want to create jobs on budget, you have to borrow money or raise taxes. This is hard to do. Well, I want you to think out of the box. The debt is certainly there, but the Keynesian toolbox is exhausted, at least in terms of the usual Keynesian approach. Keynes would say, spend money on budget, borrow it. Many difficulties in doing that. So instead, let's look at it differently. Don't do it on budget. Do it off budget. Seize control of your central bank, at least to some degree, maybe not immediately all at once. Do it on the installment plan. We're often told, where are the tools? What's with the policy bullets now? They're all exhausted. The government has done what it can do. The Fed has done what it can do, and still there's no recovery. Now, it would have been better to have a direct jobs program, Works Progress Administration, Public Works Administration already in 2009. But don't worry about that. It's not too late. Where there's life, there's hope. We have to go back to the Voitinsky-Lautenbach method. That method says not government spending, but government lending. Get control of your central bank. make it act at least to some degree as a national bank. In the case of the United States, Congress pass a law which says the Federal Reserve is hereby ordered to issue $1 trillion of 0% federal credit for infrastructure, manufacturing, factories, agriculture, and everything that has a tangible physical product. We don't need additional 0% federal credit for banks, hedge funds, and credit card companies and speculators, because that has now been tried. The 0% has been there for most of the time since the fall of 2008. We've had 0% interest rates. That side doesn't work. That just creates hot money that flees the country. Let's try something new. Let's try federal lending, or better yet, let's try federal discounting of bonds that are issued by regional authorities that are building infrastructure. What do we need? Well, everybody can see it. The entire interstate highway system is at the point of collapse. The rail network is at the point of collapse. The electricity grid is at the point of collapse. I see that Senator Domenici wants to restart agitation in favor of nuclear energy. Bring it on, but do it within the framework of what I'm saying, or you'll never get anywhere. We're told that we need a national infrastructure bank, right? That's the MAFO bill alternative. The National Infrastructure Bank, proposed by Obama and other Democrats now, where they're going to try to say that's the answer. Well, I don't think it's the answer. It's too small. It doesn't have the credit-generating power of the Federal Reserve. Plus, the rake-off demanded by Soros and other financiers for the National Infrastructure Bank is just so high that your costs get to be much, much too much. We've got to find a way to bring down the cost of capital for productive activities, for infrastructure, industry, agriculture, and related things. So bring down the cost of capital to practically zero. Get it as close to zero as you can. This is the biggest favor you can do to the business community. And, of course, this will then mandate the creation of jobs. And I don't mean sweatshop jobs, but union wages, productive jobs. The infrastructure will now be a big theme. But the lesson of Wojcinski for the unions, for the German Trade Union Confederation, and Lautenbach, the smartest guy in the German finance ministry, is that you can use your central bank as a national bank to support lending activities of the commercial banking system in regard to infrastructure above all. We can just start with the idea of rebuild the interstate highways, rebuild the nation's water systems, rebuild the electricity grid, rebuild urban mass transit, or build it to begin with. These kinds of things. You can even get into ambitious water projects in the western states. You can begin to rebuild a whole series of dams that are now left over from 70 years ago. You get the idea. This also gets you out of the trenches. In other words, it's a way to flank the entrenched, hardened fronts that you're dealing with. You don't want to have a frontal attack saying it's time to raise taxes and use that for a jobs program. Difficult to do. Why not do something unexpected? Attack on a front where the Republican defenses are much weaker. Indeed, where precisely a large part of the Republican Party would be sympathetic to something that would be, you could make it, you could bill it, you could present it in terms of the public relations. You can say this is actually an attack on the Federal Reserve, because it would be. It would be a way to force the Federal Reserve and Bernanke to do something that they don't want to do and that otherwise they would not do. So you could say, let's all gang up on the Fed and make them finance a recovery. We demand $1 trillion at 0% for starters, and when that works well, watch it take off. Watch this policy acquire legs. As for the job creators, if you do create a job, you should get a tax credit. But if you buy a derivative, you should get hit with a higher tax. But that, again, is not going to create a recovery. We'll be back next week on World Crisis Radio. In the meantime, keep up with everything at Tarpley.net, Webster G. Tarpley Twitter feed, and good luck to everyone listening in.